Great greetings. Welcome to another video being recorded this Sunday of April 16th. This is the third one today. Uh, I guess I thought to myself, I wanted to cover a lot of these slides or these articles, but I'm realizing I really need to try to not make, you know, such a long ass video. So I want to cover, some of these articles I found that I found so interesting. Everything is like relearning for the American Indian. So I just, the last video we reread Dane Calloway's famous articles that talks about 98% of African Americans are American Indians. And that was, a good refresher. But that was among a few articles I wanted to share. The reason why I brought up the Dane Calloway article, it was a personal thing for me. I was trying to look back to, I kind of forgot where I first began my journey back to becoming who I am, at least being aware of who I am as an American Indian. And I was trying to chart, what year did it begin? Because as of late, I've been uh at work, I've decided that I've made a conscious effort to wear my feathers, with a headband or as an earring, like I've often said. And I realize I guess I'm gearing up for a conversation for those who dare to ask me, what is that about? And it made me look because I realize my testimony is powerful. um, my testimony as an American Indian revolves around the fact that it was being quote unquote indigenous that afforded me to obtain my religious exemption. And so I needed to look back in time and, I saved a lot of articles. Actually, you know, it would have been much of it during my lunch hours at work when I would first became aware of something like the Dane Calloway article. So I wanted to trace back. And the point of doing that was to solidify that no, I didn't become an Indian just so I can seek a religious exemption. This pot was already boiling before any mention of any jab or any COVID. So my ancestors were looking out for me before the storm came. And that is my most powerful testimony when someone wants to look at me and what is this about? Why do you think you're an Indian? Or what is this with the feathers and all of that? And I'll have my beads on. I'll have my shoes that look like basically almost like moccasins because they're basically desert boots. So becoming my favorite shoe to wear. I love the look of a good desert boot. I love the suede, and I like the look, and it makes me feel my indigenous roots. I love to look down at my feet and see that suede. I really like a nice suede shoe. Leather's okay as well, but there's something very natural about suede. It looks like a skin, you know. So it kind of gives me indigenous. It gives me American Indian, and I'm loving it, you know. And I luckily, you know, way before I thought to you know make them like a staple, I just fall in love with them before, you know, claim, you know, before identifying fully as an Indian, you know. So the love was there, you know, it was there. Just it just showed up at the right time. Just you know, so like I have beautiful multicolored. Like I have my favorite are the tan ones because I don't know, it speaks American Indian to me for some reason. The tan ones, and I'll wear it, you know, with dark pants, maybe dark colored pants, so they kind of stick out, and maybe a top with some tan overtones or whatever, undertones or embellishments, you know. It's a whole thing, you know. And so I have the blue suede like desert boot. I have the brown, I have the tan, I have a beautiful uh army green, I would say. Uh of course black. Um do I have any other? I have a burgundy. Oh, that really is. Whew, I love my burgundies. I need a new pair actually because my burgundies, I wear them so much. You know, the suede is a little bit worn, but it still has that rich burgundy color. I love it. Uh, you know, I like to, you know, and again, I'll just match it with a top that has those colors. But anyway, we're here again. But yeah, that's my testimony. My testimony is being an Indian saved my damn life. And so yes, you will see me if it looks strange, let me tell you the story behind it. And then it won't be so strange anymore. Uh being an Indian saved my life. This, you know, and that's just the end of it. You know, that's just the end and the beginning of it. Okay. So yes, when I wear my Indian garb, it's meaning. It's not just a play. Far from it. I look at it as a lifesaver, okay? And really being in touch with who I am, you know? So yeah, that is the story. And I mean, I have yet to really be asked. You know, New Yorkers are very hands off, you know, which is great. You know, I don't, you know, but I still want to have my testimony. And I love my testimony. Absolutely, I'm very grateful to the ancestors for giving me such a testimony that makes me feel justified. You know, I just love it, you know. So anyway, let's get into this video. This is another article I found. But yeah, to say it again and close the thought. Dane's piece was one of the, I think I found that as early as 2017. And so it was way before the pandemic is what I'm trying to say. So these were articles that were coming to me, and you know, the message coming to the ancestors, and it was before the pandemic. Uh so it wasn't a rush to be, oh, I'm an Indian, so I don't have to get the jab. No, wasn't that at all. I was already on my way to reclaiming my Indian status, you know, as much as I know how. And I have a ways to go, I'll admit. But I'm going to enjoy this journey. Come hella high water, I'm going to enjoy this journey. Okay, so that's my little story, my little testimony. I hope, you know, many Indians have their own testimony, you know. So let's get to this other article. So in the midst of looking to find the origin of where I began to awaken as an American Indian, I came across, actually, this one may have been something I recently found, but I did come across a bunch of old articles like pre COVID, that spoke and let me know that I was well on my way on this journey. Okay. So actually, this might not be one of those articles. This is a newer article dated 2022. But it's still, something that I thought I would look at among the articles like Dane Calloway's. So let's share our screen. Okay, so this article is called The Copper Colored Race. And as you can see, it is from an African leaning website, but I still found this article interesting enough to do a video on because there was wording that I liked in this article. It helped me to you'll see it. I'll let you know when we get to it. It was wording that I needed to explain the Walter Plecker crime. Okay, so this is the Copper Colored Race from the African American Folklorist.com from February 5th, 2022. So this is during COVID. This is not one of my pre-COVID articles, like I had introduced, but it is one that I, in my list of articles that I think I want to take a look at. So let's look. This is written by Lamont Purley. Okay, so we're going to, pardon his leaning toward, this Black and African rhetoric, because he says some important things that I think, we all fall short when, speaking to, the quote unquote African American paradigm, that whole narrative. So it's a journey. We got to get used to being American Indians again. So we're going to pardon him. Please pardon his language, but we'll get to the meat. And I think we'll find, like I did, some value in what he's saying. So let me get through this. Why aren't Black Indians part of Black History Month? Which is actually a valid question. You know what I'm saying? Like, so even if we were separate somehow, right, we're still, in other words, even if we go with the corporations rhetoric that says Black Indians are secondary Indians as offspring of African slaves and American Indians. So they're trying to run a narrative that's saying, no, we weren't the first Indians, but we did mix with them. And that's what the Indian in America is. No, that's not what the American Indian is. But I like this because he did put forth in, okay, even if that were the case, how come no one talks about it? You know what I'm saying? His article made you realize, well, seems like you don't want to talk about even the Indians that you are making up, the ones that you say are derivative of American Indians and Africans. So here, I think it kind of shows us the corporation has no intention on recognizing us as Indians, period. Not even in their own live version of us do they mention us. They quickly say it and then they move on, calling us what they want to call us, and with a whole narrative suggesting that we are secondary Indians, resulting with the union of Africans and Indians. This is not the case. And I think this brother touched on that even in his use of misnomers in this article. So let's read the article. Black History Month, also known as African American History Month, was the brainchild of Carter G. Woodson, an author, journalist, and historian in 1925. Okay, that date is kind of very telling, Yeah. Um, just very late, in our history as American Indians. Looking to bring attention to the contributions of African Americans in a non-Black dominated American system, Woodson launched the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, ASNLH, which quickly led to the conception and bringing forth of Negro History Week in 1926, galvanizing the energies and excellence of Black teachers, activists, and organizations, as well as white progressive philanthropists. Black History Month, in the course of 50 years, grew from a week or a 1 week celebration, to a nationwide week celebration, all the way to a full month extravaganza, encouraged by President Gerald R. Ford in 1976. Since then, it's been a call for politicians to connect with the African American community. Why would they do that? When we don't have any rights as African Americans, right? So why would they need to connect with us? They don't have to, right? Anyway, used to make Black students of all ages and grade levels feel included within the school system. A school system that we learned was unconstitutional. We never gave Congress, as one of its enumerated functions, the authority to start a school system. Okay. So used to make Black students of all ages and grade levels feel included within the school system, and presented as the 1 month out of the year to celebrate, honor, and study Black America. It's a time where the nation reflects on the one-time battered slave who by some means learned to read and swindle their way into the good grace of the elite white power structure. It's also the month every ethnicity and nationality remembers Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Harriet Tubman, and the few other documented Black heroes that made it into the mainstream textbooks. However, there is a group of Black folk that truly would be considered Black American or even American Black that is rarely mentioned in the celebration of Black History Month. They are called the copper-colored people. So I don't know if you can appreciate it, but he makes, it's a kind of a legitimate point. It's kind of just saying that although we're spoken of, we're still not really spoken of. We're mentioned quickly, and then it's back off to the races of being called colored, Negro, Black, and African American. What happened to the copper-colored people? I think it's a very legitimate question. So that's why I like this article, and I'm going to show you where he helped me with the wording I needed. There was something going on with the Walter Plecker thing. I couldn't word it right. This article helped me, and I'll show you where he does that. So there's a people being left out, and they're called the copper-colored people. And he's right. We would be considered, as were relabeled Negro, colored, Black. So technically he's right. We've been lumped together, when we were reclassified. According to the American Dictionary of English, also referred to as Webster's Dictionary, 1828, the Native American, also called Indians, were as described: American, now, a native of America, originally applied to the aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by the Europeans, but now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. The latter part of that definition is telling. However, we're discussing the copper-colored people. So it is rather telling because it doesn't say what happened to the copper-colored people. But we know that we were paper genocided. And after we were paper genocided, then Europeans were just called American. So our whole national designation was taken from us and given to Europeans, right? We didn't have any of it left. We were just called colored. We went from copper colored to just colored, right? And colored morphed into Negro. Negro morphed into black. Black morphed into African American. Nothing that would recognize that we're first Americans, right? As copper colored, right? Because that is the definition, after all, of an American. Originally applied to copper colored races. Originally. Not aboriginally, just originally. Again, we want to stay away from, okay, let me see, 17, okay, 1828. We have already had the 1787 Constitution, right? So why are we veering away from the term Indian in 1828? In an 1828 dictionary, we should have just been called Indians. But see, they're doing everything to recreate us, right? Aboriginal. Let's call us Indians as the Constitution. Again, by 1828, we already had the Continental Constitution of 1878. I'm sorry, of 1787, right? 1787. Okay. So we were known as Indian before we were known as Aboriginal, according to our Constitution. Okay. So we want to stick with what the Constitution called us, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. That's all I'm saying. We got to line up our ducks and they got to line up right. Okay. We're not going to use other words. Okay. So the latter part of that definition is telling. However, we're discussing the copper-colored people. And there's a picture of our copper-colored people. Who's Custard in the back looking on, right? Yeah, they were put here. They had a king over them. You hear me? When you see this Caucasian, just remember, he had a king over him who knew exactly what he was doing. That would have been King James, okay? So it wasn't him doing it. It was him being instructed by his king, King James. Okay. So who are the copper-colored people and why are they important? There are documentaries and literature that makes the claim Black Indians are the offspring of Africans and natives intermingling. However, there is evidence that the term copper-colored is equivalent to Negro or Black as well as brown. And that these copper-colored or Black people are the original occupants of this land, hence the definition above. So Indians look just like so-called Negroes, according to the 1828 dictionary. They didn't say that they were descendants of Mongolians, did they? They said the original races were copper colored. I'm looking at my skin right now. And if I'm not copper colored, I don't know what is. Okay? That's how dumb, really the corporation is when it relies on a skin tone, right? Because that they did use that against us, right? They just looked at us and assumed that we're African based on the color of our skin. They don't ask where we from what our family said. They're not concerned about that, right? So we just have to use the same thing they use to disenfranchise us, to re-enfranchise ourselves. If you said copper colored was an Indian, that's what I am. Okay, let's not try to make it any more complicated. It was real easy for you when you denationalized us. So make it just as easy when we go back to take our nationality back. How about that? Let's just make it easy on everybody, okay? For me, the writer is saying this, knowing that my family story so far begins in Mississippi and Louisiana, as well as having confirmation that my mother's parents are of Choctaw bloodline, inspires me to raise the question of Black Indians partaking in the annual Black History Month festivities. How about we just have a copper-colored History Month, you know? Anyway, it also raises the question of who the blues people of the Delta are. Now, he mentions this, but he doesn't really go into any detail. I guess that's a separate search, the blue people of the Delta area. Furthermore, being a dark-skinned man, my mother a dark-skinned woman, and my grandfather, likewise of dark complexion, I still have to ask, why aren't Black Indians more present in this celebration? Well, to really answer the question and keep it simple, it's because they reclassified us as Black. So according to them, we are part of the Black History celebration because it's just that they started calling us Black now. And that's what Walter Plecker did. So his question is a little bit moot point, but I think we can somewhat hear what he's saying. Like, why aren't they mentioned anymore, although they're mentioned in the 1828 dictionary? Why are they? Well, we've been genocide. Okay. Okay. Paper genocide. Okay. I still have to ask, why aren't Black Indians more present in this celebration? Or are they? Before we can address that, I believe a more pivotal conflict would be the description of Black Indians. Again, if we take the Webster's Dictionary of 1828 as fact, it clearly states who is and how the Aboriginal of this land looked. But when you read and research documents of academics and historians, Black Indians are described as mixed or essentially African converts. November 30th, 2010, NPR's The Show, Tell Me More, conducted a month-long series that observed National Native American Heritage Month, which I believe is in November. This particular episode struck me based on its description. Tell Me More concludes its observance of National Native American Heritage Month with a look at the struggle of some African Americans for acceptance by those whom they consider kin. Usually I love to listen to NPR's audio podcast, but this time I needed to read the transcripts. I had to see in black and white what were the thoughts, beliefs, and supposed facts presented by the host and guest of this show. The show host, Michael Martin, or Michelle, I'm sorry, Michael or Michelle Martin, spoke with the guest William Katz, author of Black Indians, A Hidden Heritage, and Shonda Buchanan, an English professor who is of North Carolina and Mississippi Choctaw Indian ancestry. The show description further explained that they look to explore shared Black and Native American heritage. William Katz's book, Black Indians, A Hidden Heritage, raises the case that runaway African slaves in the Americas, initial place of asylum, so to speak, was to flee to native reservations. There, the African slave, male or female, would be welcomed and build relationships that led to interracial marriages and acceptance by the tribes. This is how he describes the origins of the Black Indians, or the connection between African Americans and natives. The interview begins like this. Martin says, "So, Mr. Katz, will you start with us and tell us how the relationship between African Americans and Native Americans began?" Mr. Katz answers, "Well, it began with the earliest colonial period. Soon after Columbus arrived, Africans were brought in." Now, we just read Dane Calloway's article, and we know that this is some bullshit, right? Okay. And so you have a pattern of Native Americans taking in African Americans, and the two people mixing and forming a kind of united front against the forces that were bringing slavery and colonialism to the Americas. So this has a long history. Now, this is what I like when he gave me the wording that I need. He says, the author of this article says, "This conversation sets up a false narrative that Indians weren't Black to begin with." You see, now he is using the misnomer, but look at what he's saying. We have a false narrative that Indians didn't start off copper-colored, but became copper-colored after mixing with what they are calling Native Americans or the Mongolians. He's saying this conversation, and this is not the only conversation that does that. This is why this article kind of was important to me. And I just want to make sure that we're focused on that part of the article. This conversation, like so many others, sets up a false narrative that Indians weren't, I want to say, copper-colored to begin with. The language used in the description of the people infers the Indian and the African having different hues. So I'll read that again. The language used in the description of the people infers the Indian and the African having different hues. Okay, you catch it? That's why I really appreciated this article. He speaks to the false narrative that the corporation uses very often to suggest that the Indians were something other than what we are calling Black people when they were not. The use of political terms like African American mixing with Native Indians gives a sense that the natives weren't Black until they began to mix with Africans and their descendants. The way it's presented is false, however. The natives indeed helped those in bondage. Okay, the way it's presented is false. However, the natives indeed helped those in bondage. They were just natives. They were not indigenous. Some would question why it would be important to make this distinction between political names or even the actual color of the original Americans. I'd counter by explaining, if you were always told Indians looked like their portrayal in movies and just accepted that without questioning it, then you would never find a red flag in Mr. Katz's description of the quote-unquote Black Indian. Nor would you be so inclined to investigate if there and what was the relationship between African Americans, and natives. I think they're missing a word here. But he's saying, nor would you be inclined to investigate if there was and what was the relationship between African Americans and natives, because they're one and the same, is what he's saying. You wouldn't the relationship would be they're one and the same, not one came to help the other and they mixed together and then there was a Black Indian. No. Furthermore, which is the elephant in the room, one wouldn't venture to investigate why most people who categorize themselves as African American are in fact the descendants of Black Indians. So you wouldn't investigate it if you were, being lied to all the time, to honestly and earnestly celebrate Black History Month, we should know, or at least want to know, who a great percentage of Black people are, let alone where they descend. Well, this is just an example of someone who does not fully understand that Black History Month is just celebrating something that doesn't exist, because there is no nationality called Black. It's a crayon color. It's worse, a caste system designation. So we as American Indians know that Black History Month should not be at all, because it's celebrating a dead entity, a fictitious corporate created entity that we should not associate ourselves with unless we want to be dominated by a corporation and not held in the protection of our own Constitution. So where this writer, although he's saying he's Indian, he still has not realized that if you're an Indian, then Black History Month should be voided, deaded, no longer. We should celebrate only American Indian or copper-colored Indian Month, if we're going to celebrate at all. Okay? Many documented facts back up my claim. One, you can ask Black Indians. Two, you can look up William Byrd. William Byrd was a white man of the Virginia colony. He and others of the Colonial Council and the Commonwealth of Virginia committed colonial encroachment, economic suffrage, and violation of their treaties with the Indians. If you read his report from his visit to the Cheroanhaka Nottoway Indian tribe of Southampton County, Virginia, in 1728, now this is way before the Constitution, right? Called the William Byrd Papers, you'd find some interesting facts. He states the young men danced to the beat of a gourd drum, stretched tight with a skin. The women wore blue and red match coats, and their hair braided with blue and white beads. He also states about the women he sees, these dark angels will make exceptional wives for the English planters. Yeah, and they'd also make a new breed of people for these colonizers to feel they have dibs on our land. Their dark skin would bleach out in 2 generations. Okay. In an interview on WHRO public media program called Another View, Chief Walt Red Hawk Brown of the Cheroanhaka Nottoway Indian tribe states, first Americans was a rich brown people. They were mahogany in color. Now, mahogany is just a beautiful shade of brown. Okay. So we were mahogany in color. Okay. Way before the famous Diana Ross movie. The painting of that movie, what do you call it? The what is it, like a playbill, whatever? It was a painting, and I've it always struck me now this is way before I knew about being an Indian, but the way Diana Ross is painted in that mahogany coming attraction movie flyer or billboard, the colors are so rich, including her skin in that painting. For those old enough to remember it, she's wearing a multicolored rainbow halter dress or gown, form-fitting, with mahogany painted all over, written all over the dress, and but what is striking is the skin, and that was why she was called mahogany, because it was about the color of her skin. It was beautiful. It makes me want to look it up. Let me see if I feel like looking up mahogany. And I'll never forget that painting. It really it drew you in. It made me want to. It made me want to see the movie. Just the let's see. Fair use. Let's see if we could find the yeah, there it is. This is it right here. Well, it should have been, but they flipped on me. As we know, mahogany is a wood, but that's the color. But this is what I wanted to look. I guess it's the Wikipedia. Let's see if we could. Now, this is kind of a washed out version. I don't know if I can make it bigger. Yeah, I don't know if I can make it bigger. But this is basically a washed out version. I don't know why I'm bringing it up, but I'm just, she was mahogany, right? And that's what we are described is the actual painting, or, it was very rich. This is a little bit washed out. But I just remember that was my first time even hearing that word mahogany. I didn't know what it was. But then you learned what it was. Sorry, I can't make that bigger, and I wish it was a bit richer, like where you could see, and it's not washed out. Fair use, fair use. If this requires fair use, I'm trying to get that picture. But yeah, it was just this seems to be bigger. Let's take a look. Oh, it's the same one. Yeah, same one, same size. I would have to download it to make it bigger. Let's see. Yeah, that's not going to give me that. That's it. Well, thank you to Wikipedia. It's the only one that has it. Let's see, go down. With that IMDb. Let's see if that bigger and better. IMDb. Okay, let's see if we can make that's the last scene of the movie where she finally fair use. Where she okay, so again, this is a little bit washed out, but I remember I had this album cover, and her skin was just a beautiful color, mahogany. I think they literally used the color mahogany. Okay, so there's mahogany. Okay, so let's go back to what we were reading. Yeah, here we are. Okay. The first Americans was a rich brown people. They were mahogany in color. Even with that being said, it still may be a far stretch to say majority, if not all African Americans. No, it's not a far stretch. According to our previous video where we reread Dane's, groundbreaking article, 98%. And I agree with that. I happen to agree with that. It was enough that they needed to reclassify us, and we were not reclassified as Africans at first, right? Because we were not. We were never called African when this thing went down. African American came in the 80s. What am I saying? I'm saying that we were not African. There was no proof of it. They couldn't use that back then. Because then Africa would have been called into question, right? And they didn't want to bring Africa in on this. It didn't really have anything to do with it, really. Because it wasn't their people. I'm just going to stay like it is. In as much as we came from Africa, it was those of us that were kidnapped and put in Africa. So we were not African. It was all American. So let's just, tell it like a TI is. Even with that being said, it still may be a far stretch. No, it's not. To say a majority, if not all African Americans are there. No. It's not a stretch at all. We're the only people on earth being denationalized, okay? Africans are not being denationalized. I don't care what you say. And if they did their ancestry, they would have to call themselves African, okay? So we don't have a great many of quote unquote Africans here doing their genealogy, do we? So who's finding out that they're not African is us. Ain't nobody finding out that they African. Very few, very few. Africans were not reclassified. Okay. It would only have been to the corporation's advantage if we were actually African. They would not have called us colored. Colored is a derivative of copper colored. That's what we were by and large. It's just a common sense thing, That's all it is. They never called us African when this shit was happening. But looking back on it, then they began to call us African slave trade, but they dare not do it at the time it happened because Africa would have been implicated, seriously implicated. And it would have been odd that Africans don't have, a say in any of this. This is all coming from the corporation. Africa is not saying anything, right? They just riding the show, not defending us, not really doing anything, just there year after year, poor as fuck. Nobody knows how they exist when that allegedly that poor, whatever, I still don't believe they have the half their resources that America has. And I don't believe that they're this huge continent either. I really don't. If it were the case, they would be the ones where this drama is taking place, not our landmass, their land. And so they it already happened, and no, the hell it didn't. Africa didn't exist when we were basically being all kinds of infiltrated by the freaking Moors, which was our own people that got expelled. They weren't African. So don't let it try to say Africans did it to us. No, it didn't. It was our own people, okay? It was our own people, our priesthood that got very full of themselves and decided that they were not interested in the people. They were interested in domination. So they went out and fostered African culture. I believe it was Sister Bethy who said it correctly. The chiefs were doing this for whatever, they got sold out by the priesthood, or they sold out to the priesthood. And then they went along with it. It had to be those who were overseers of the people that left the people without leadership and fending for themselves against this Moorish entity that morphed into the Roman Catholic Church before there were any such thing as Hebrews. Okay, now the Catholic Church creates a narrative and they backdate, it was just Christians. It was just Christians and TaMerians that the Christians took their Trinity from. The first Trinity was Osar, Oset, and Heru. So the first religion had to mirror that in order to be roughly accepted by the people at all. But, you give them an inch, they take a mile. Next thing you know, they getting rid of all the deities but one. And you can rest assured, the one that they kept was Set, the malevolent. That's the one that the Moors are worshiping. They introduced the dragon to the Mongolians, and I'm going to keep on saying that till it makes sense. So the first Mongolian Indians were worshiping a dragon, which American Indians would have never. The real American Indians, knowing what the dragon was before it was turned into Quetzalcoatl and Kukulkan and Amaru, our bloodline, we would have known exactly what that dragon was. It was Apep. In our ancient system, it was Apep, and he was every bit of malevolent. So, it's just things you have to get familiar with. That's why TaMeri is so important, because again, I'll always say it lines up your ducks for you. You know what a dragon deity evolved from when you include TaMeri. If you get rid of TaMeri, you have no idea what Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan, or Amaru is. That's why TaMeri is so important to us. These are all all the deities are coming from TaMeri. This is just a fact. And I said it in one of my videos that I didn't actually use. This is why we don't want to go to Mu or Lemuria or what's the other one? Atlantis, right? Because their deity, we don't know about their deity system. The deity system will tell you about the people. If you go on with some culture that you don't know their deities, you'll never understand where Christianity and the monotheistic religions came from. That is why TaMeri is important. It's a roadmap. It's a who's who of where the deities came from. That is why TaMeri is of utmost importance. Everybody is finding their footing in TaMeri. Why? It's because it's the first formal world-renowned civilization was TaMeri, not Atlantis. Atlantis is a sea jurisdiction. We don't know what race the people were. They're going to say it was, they'll have to say it were people of color, but they have to. But that will be hotly debated because we don't have any artifacts from Atlantis, do we? Do y'all believe that they found any artifacts from it? Are they going strictly by some literature like the Bible? Just purely literature for the most part. And I don't mean that as a personal attack. I'm just saying, when you build your whole system on literature, you don't have artifacts. What you do is create artifacts or look for anything that you can claim is an artifact. But you're doing that with a narrative already in your brain. You're not just looking for the artifact. You're looking with the intention of looking for, say, a Noah's Ark. That could have been any boat, right? But when you're so hell-bent on, you know, making fiction real, hey, you go out on a mission, you know. So anyway, let's finish this up and wrap this up. You know, I'm still making long videos when I'm trying to keep them short. So let's even with that being said, still may be a far stretch. It still may be a far stretch to say a majority, if not all, African Americans are descendants of Black Indians. No, it's not. Not a stretch at all, because everybody on this landmass has to be taken off of it. And if you don't know yourself to be African, you're very likely only American. And you're an American Indian, who, by the way, who's been supplanted into Europe. So then they send you back and now you think you're European. Or they put you in Africa and send you back and now you think you're African when you are nothing but American Indian. That is why I'm going to shout out to Michael, who, you know, recently showed me with his research. West Africa was settled by Americans, American Indians. Let's just, you know, let's just stop the bullshit, okay? So that's why they think they can call us all African, because they figure, oh, we sent you there, so you became African. No, that is not my homeland. I was kidnapped to Africa and built up Liberia and all of that. That's not where I'm from, though. They love putting us in Africa. They are so in love with that little theater that they cooked up. You know, they didn't really think that gets us, you know. You're West African. Yeah, because you took me from here and planted me over there. Just like you want to call me European when you took me from here, built up your country, and then deported us back here after you whitened it up. Moors. I don't want to hear nothing about how the Moors were taken over. All the poor Moors were defeated. Fuck that. They got what they deserved. Why? Because they fostered all of this. So when you go out to make slaves, you might get enslaved, but don't try to tell me that that's me being judged by your deities. No. First of all, your deities are not my deities. And as much as they are, they're the malevolent deities, which we knew what they were when we were in our right mind. We would have never considered them to be our most high, like you do, Moors. So whatever trouble you got into, Moors, put you this way. You got what you set out to do come back on you. If somebody treated you bad, it's because you treated them bad. If any of those Spanish or Mongolians or whatever, if they turned on your ass, that was just karma. Has nothing to do with American Indians. It was your fast ass out there trying to conduct shit and be in charge of everything, meanwhile making slaves of everybody. You know, you make these people and then you want to make them your slaves, and they don't like that. So you were bound to find trouble. But you found a way with your priesthood to use American Indians in your sacrifice system. Did I talk about sacrifice already? Well, let's talk about it again. The sacrifice system, the idea that something else can be used in place of you getting judgment, is something the priests cooked up for their sins. It's not what men and women should aspire for. Because like the corporation, it takes away your responsibility. And it becomes that much easier for you to sin. And which the priests are, they swim in an ocean of sin. they have gone the farthest against our natural laws when it talks about mixing and interbreeding and so on and so forth. They are the ones who needed a sacrifice system like a Jesus or a lamb. It was the priesthood figured out a way to elude judgment by making a whipping boy or a sacrificial lamb, and then telling we, the people, that we need that done. You're the ones who knows God and knows the things of God. You needed that. But then we became their sacrifice, American Indians. If you really want to, just take this to its only logical end, the American Indian became the sacrificial lamb for the sins of the Moors, which are plenty. This is just according to their own monotheism. I didn't make the rules that condemn them, they did. But that was in their haste to make us sinners, but they only condemn themselves. They're the ones that created a hell, and if God is good, they will get to experience that hell personally, since they're so willing to stick American Indians into that hell. That's why you got whatever you got, Moors. You were not innocent in this. You were the origin of all of this. Yes, you were. Yes, you were. So any slavery that you endured, if you claim to have endured, or any retribution that you endured, you earned that. I am not coddling the Moors. The way I feel about them, there's just no way. There's just no way. They are hindering our American Indian awakening. They will not stay in their lane. What they should be doing is applauding us, not claiming to be us if they were our brother. If they were our brother, they would know that we've endured the longest running oppression on the face of the earth. They would not be busy trying to tell us how much they are us, okay? They would be saying, they would be applauding. And that would be it. They would, no further words necessary, only words of support. They are not our friends. And I will say that as long as I have a voice, and I intend on having my voice for a very long time. We're going to get it right, y'all, when Heru is in the house, okay? You will not go astray when the energy of Heru is present. And I'm not even talking about myself right now. You got to line up with the deity that fights for his legacy, like Heru did. I always invite people to look up the contendings of Heru and Set, or you could look up Horus and Set, because the Greeks called him Horus. Love renaming, and he had to be renamed because ain't nobody trying to utter that name. Why? Because that would be in favor of the American Indian. How? Just like the American Indian, Heru fought to reclaim his birthright. It's just plain and simple. Find your ancestor that has been through what you've been through, and they will help you through. If you turn up your nose and be like a Christian, oh, I can't be bothered with that. That was not us. There is no other deity that fights the battle like Heru does. You won't find it. I haven't. His is the oldest, the original story of the hero that gets his birthright. Not like Jake Benisaw's story. No, baby. It's going to the rightful heir, not the thief. Okay? So look it up. Look up the contendings of Horus and Set. What you should be looking for is the similarities of the Moors with the god known as Set. And you will find that they have done everything that Set has done. That's what you got to open your eyes. They have done everything that deity has, they have murdered in order to power grab, identity theft. Just like the god Set did. Now, Set is one of many gods. So, yeah, he's the one that is against all the other gods until they check him. That's why the deity in monotheism does not want to talk about other gods. In fact, it wants to be known as the only God because it knows that all the other gods ruled not in his favor. They ruled in favor of Heru. That's what they ruled in favor of. They said the birthright goes to the firstborn of the true king, Osar. That is Heru, not Heru's uncle Set, who was the brother of Asar, who was a jealous god. He was jealous of Osar, just like you will find the Moors deities are jealous. They're jealous storm, war, rain, chaos, desert deities. That is the deity of monotheism. With three different faces, I guess. You know? So yeah, we gotta talk about this. I'm sorry. We have to talk it out, you know. So let's see. We don't have much further to go, and then we'll call it a night. That's where Walter Ashby Plecker comes into play. Plecker ran Virginia's Bureau of Vital Statistics, which was established in 1912. Plecker, a practicing eugenicist, changed the birth certificates, marriage licenses, and other documents of Black Indians. Now, he's calling us Black Indians. I would really appreciate if he wouldn't do that. Okay, but he's still at his stage of learning, right? He even wrote letters to census takers, giving them instructions on how to categorize Black Indians. So they're coming for us, right? Actively. And who's at the bottom of this? Now he's doing all this renaming and reassigning, but who ends up at the bottom? The true Indians do. That was the whole point. Okay, that was the whole point. Some people like to say he reclassified people as white. Well, if he did, that was an upgrade. Being called Black was a downgrade, but they were both in, or I should say, both outside of constitutional protections. That's the interesting thing. White people are being punked too. They're paying taxes that they weren't supposed to be paying after the government went fiat. All debts were supposed to be paid, even for the immigrant. So white people are also getting shafted. They're just getting a little more Vaseline. Okay, that's all. A little more lubrication, a little more love, but it's a rape all the same. Okay. So his Racial Integrity Act of 1924 further destroyed the identity of the Indian. We're just going to call ourselves what we are, American Indian, okay? Black is a misnomer, so we don't want that part of our ag designation or whatever. By changing the categories on documents to simply white and Black, at this point, American Indians in this region went from colored to Black. which we know was followed by African American, Afro American, and then African American. Okay. Again, those are just a couple of examples. This article is the first in a series of articles on the American Indian. I don't like using the misnomer. I truly don't. So as we celebrate Black History Month, which we shouldn't be doing, I would encourage you all to open your mind, question almost everything, and ask yourself, who are the blues people? Well, he never really went into these blues people, because with this research, as well as tracing back to the entire Delta region, one should begin to revisit, reread, and question a lot of the documentation that's been presented and archived about the blues people. He keeps referring to the blues people. Okay, so should we quickly look up the blues people before we close? Because I never did do this. Again, this article is called The Copper-Colored Race. So I will probably name my video The Copper-Colored Race in honor of this article, which I thought it had some worthy points. Now let's look up quickly before we close the blues people. Okay, we're gonna get a list of jazz musicians. The blues people. Okay. Okay. Blues people. Wikipedia. Okay. Yeah, see, they doing with singers. Let's see what else did he say about these blues people? Did he say they were of the Delta? Okay. Blues people. Okay. Okay. Who are the blues people? Entire Delta region. Okay, the blues people of the entire Delta region. Okay. Let's try that. The blues people of the entire Delta. It's going to bring up the article, watch. It's going to bring up the same article, Delta region. Okay, let's go back. Okay. Okay. Let's go. Yeah, I guess maybe he's talking about the musicians. I don't know. The blues people. Delta blues. Okay. Maybe he's talking about musicians. What's going on here? Come on, stop it, stop. Uh who are the blues people? Because with this research, as well as tracing back to the entire Delta region, one should begin to revisit, reread archives about the blues people. We'll have to look at that at another time. Right now, it seems like he's just talking about musicians. I don't know, But on that note, we're gonna stop our share, and I want to say thank you for watching. I think this is it for tonight. This is three at a shot here. So I wish you peace, blessings, wealth, health, your land back, your identity back, all the good things. Until next time, thank you so much for watching.